Beneath the streets of London, there is another city. A city of brick and shadow, a silent, flowing testament to an age of iron and steam. The official story calls it the London Main Drainage System. It is presented as a monument to Victorian genius, a Herculean feat of engineering that saved a metropolis from its own filth. We are told a simple story. In the mid-19th century, a crisis called the Great Stink paralyzed the city. A hero, Joseph Bazalgette, conceived a brilliant plan. And through grit and ingenuity, an army of workers built over 1,000 miles of sewers, transforming London into the world's first modern city. It is a powerful narrative, a story of progress against all odds. But it is just that, a story. When you look past the heroic portraits and the grand proclamations, when you examine the cold, hard numbers of the project itself, the story begins to unravel. The official account is not just improbable, it is a mathematical impossibility. The number of bricks, the volume of earth, the logistics of transport, they do not align with the known capabilities of the era. This investigation will not celebrate the myth. It will analyze the data. We will demonstrate that the accepted history of how London's foundation was built is a logistical fiction. The question is not how they did it. The question is, what are the official records concealing? To understand the anomaly, you must first understand the object itself. We are not talking about a simple pipe. We are talking about a subterranean network of architectural significance. Descend into the system, and you find yourself not in a crude tunnel, but in a cathedral of brick. The interceptor sewers are vast, some large enough to drive a train through. The brickwork is immaculate. Perfect arches, Romanesque in their form and precision, curve overhead. The mortar is seamless, the bonds are flawless. These are not the rough-hewn tunnels of a desperate project, built quickly to solve a crisis. They exhibit a level of craftsmanship and permanence that seems to defy their supposed origin. Now, contrast this subterranean world with the world above it in the 1860s. The London of popular history is a city of chaos. It is a city of horse-drawn carts churning mud, of wooden scaffolding and primitive hand tools. It's a city of cast iron and coal smoke, but its core technologies are still fundamentally pre-industrial in many ways. Communication is by letter, transport is by hoof. The heaviest lifting is done by steam-powered cranes, but these are rare, clumsy beasts. The vast majority of work is done by human and animal muscle. This is the visual disconnect. The world below appears more sophisticated, more permanent, and more precisely engineered than the world above. The design philosophy seems to come from a different era entirely. The tunnels were built to last for centuries, using a quality of material and a precision of labor that was not reflected in the disposable, fast-paced construction happening on the surface. How does a society using hand tools, candlelight, and brute force create something so uniform and vast beneath the ground? The two realities do not seem to belong to the same timeline. The official explanation is that this was simply the peak of Victorian pride in engineering. But that doesn't explain the sheer discrepancy in quality and design. It feels like uncovering a Roman aqueduct beneath a wooden fort. The technology seems misplaced. One has to ask, does the style of the construction truly match the supposed builders? The story collapses when we move from subjective impressions to objective logistics. Let's analyze the raw materials. The project officially required 318 million bricks. The construction period lasted 17 years, from 1858 to 1875. Let's do the simple math. Over 17 years, that is an average of over 18 million bricks per year. Or, broken down further, over 51,000 bricks delivered and laid every single day, 7 days a week, for 17 years straight. Think about what that number means in the 19th century. Where did these bricks come from? Each one had to be molded, fired in a kiln, cooled, and inspected. This suggests a massive, dedicated industrial operation producing bricks of a consistent, high quality on a scale that would be impressive even today. Now consider their transportation. The primary mode of transport was the horse-drawn cart. A typical cart could hold, at most, 500 to 1,000 bricks. To deliver 51,000 bricks per day, you would need a fleet of between 50 and 100 carts making deliveries every single day. This fleet is dedicated solely to bricks. But that's only half of the equation. For every cart of bricks that comes in, another cart must leave with excavated earth. The project removed 3.5 million cubic yards of soil. That's enough to fill a modern football stadium 4 times over. This equates to over 1,000 cartloads of dirt being hauled away from the construction sites every single day. So now, picture the streets of Victorian London. They are already notoriously congested. And we are meant to believe that the city absorbed an additional traffic burden of over 1,000 carts per day, moving in and out of active work zones, without bringing the entire commercial life of the capital to a complete standstill. Where did all this earth go? The official narrative says it was used for embankments. A neat solution, but the logistics of moving that volume of material in a coordinated way are never detailed. The sheer manpower required is staggering. Tens of thousands of laborers, known as navvies, were involved. But this wasn't just digging. It required thousands of highly skilled bricklayers working in cramped, dark, and dangerous conditions, with no modern ventilation. They had to execute perfect brick arches with only candlelight and plumb bobs. Where did this instant army of specialized tradesmen come from? Did the population of master bricklayers in England suddenly multiply overnight to meet the demand? A project of this magnitude requires a supply chain, a workforce, and a transportation infrastructure that appears to be far beyond the documented capacity of the era. It is not a question of ingenuity. It is a question of pure physics and logistics. The numbers presented in the official record create a scenario that is practically impossible to execute. When faced with such logistical contradictions, the next logical step is to consult the official records for answers. What you find is not clarification, but a deeper mystery. The entire narrative is built around a single man, Sir Joseph Bazalgette. He is the hero, the visionary, the singular genius who conceived and executed the plan. This great man theory of history is common, but here it serves to obscure the details. By focusing on one man's vision, the records conveniently bypass the granular, day-to-day realities of the work. The reports from the Metropolitan Board of Works are grand in scope. They discuss budgets, parliamentary acts, and the overarching goals of the project. They are documents of political and financial justification, but they lack the one thing a modern project manager would demand: detailed logistical breakdowns. Where are the supply manifests? The daily work logs from the hundreds of individual construction sites? The traffic management plans? The workforce sourcing reports? They are either missing or were never created. This is highly unusual. The Victorians were meticulous record keepers, obsessed with accounting and categorization. For a public works project of this expense and scale, the lack of detailed operational records is a significant red flag. It's as if the how was considered an unimportant detail. The story is the important part. The outcome is what matters. The official narrative functions like a template, one that is repeated for other large-scale projects of the era. A crisis emerges, a visionary architect is appointed, a staggering feat of construction is completed in record time, and the logistical details are glossed over with platitudes about national pride and ingenuity. The story is too clean. Real construction projects are messy, filled with delays, accidents, and supply chain failures. The official history of London's sewers presents it as a smooth, inexorable march of progress, directed by a single mind. This is not how reality works. The failure of the official story is not in what it says, but in what it omits. The silence on logistics is deafening. It forces us to consider that the narrative was constructed to fit a predetermined outcome, rather than to accurately document a process. The story explains the why, to solve the great stink. But it completely fails to provide a plausible how. The anomaly of the London sewers does not exist in isolation. If it were a singular event, it could perhaps be dismissed as a one-time miracle of engineering. But when you look globally, you begin to see a pattern. A repeating motif of impossibly grand infrastructure projects, all attributed to the same general period, and all sharing the same narrative template. Consider the sewer system of Paris, largely constructed under Baron Haussmann in the same period, from the 1850s onward. It is another subterranean marvel of brick and stone, with vast tunnels and immaculate construction. The official story is nearly identical to London's: a public health crisis, a visionary prefect, and a miraculous transformation of the city. The same logistical questions apply. The same lack of detailed records for the day-to-day execution. The same hero narrative. Now, let's widen the lens further. Look at the star forts that dot the globe, from Europe to the Americas. These are massive, geometrically complex fortifications, involving the movement of millions of cubic meters of earth and the precise placement of millions of tons of stone. Many are attributed to the 17th and 18th centuries, yet they display a level of surveying and earth-moving mastery that seems to defy the tools of the time. The narrative is always the same: a brilliant military engineer designed it to counter cannon fire. Again, the how is lost to history. We see this pattern with the early American subway systems, like in Boston or New York. The cut-and-cover method involved digging up major city thoroughfares, laying track, and building a roof over it. The disruption in the sheer volume of material moved, all with horse-drawn carts and manual labor, stretched the bounds of credulity. Each of these examples is presented as a singular triumph of a particular nation or city. But when viewed together, they form a distinct pattern. An explosion of advanced, durable, and large-scale infrastructure appears globally in a relatively short span of history. In nearly every case, the official narrative features a heroic designer, a simplified construction story, and a glaring absence of the logistical data that would be necessary to actually execute the project. It's as if a standard operating procedure exists for historical attribution. A problem is identified, a solution is implemented, and a simple, heroic story is written to claim ownership of it, regardless of the mathematical realities. Could it be that the 19th century was not an age of unprecedented creation, but an age of unprecedented discovery and adaptation? Let us return to the numbers, and break them down with cold, hard logic. The narrative asks us to believe in a level of efficiency that is simply not achievable without modern technology. Let's create a hypothetical scenario. You are a site manager for a section of the London Sewer Project in 1865. Your section is one of hundreds operating simultaneously. Your first challenge is communication. There is no telephone, no radio. All coordination with other sites, with suppliers, and with the head office is done by messenger on horseback, navigating the already clogged city streets. A simple question about a brick shipment could take half a day to get an answer. Now, let's consider the daily material flow. Over 51,000 bricks must arrive at various points along the network. This means the brick kilns, likely located outside the city, have to produce this quantity, flawlessly, every day. It means the carts must be loaded, every day. The horses must be fed and cared for, every day. The drivers must navigate a path to your specific site, every day. Any single point of failure, a lame horse, a broken axle, a muddy road, creates a cascading delay. But the official timeline allows for no such delays. It implies a 17-year period of near-perfect execution. Now, the excavation. On your site, you are digging a massive trench. Your workers, using picks and shovels, fill cart after cart with heavy London clay. Let's say a cart holds 2 cubic yards. To move the daily average of spoil, over 1,500 cartloads must leave the various sites across the city each day. That's a cart leaving a work zone every 30 seconds, all day long. This river of outgoing traffic has to merge with the river of incoming brick traffic, plus the city's normal commercial traffic. Logically, the project should have strangled the city it was trying to save. Let's examine the workforce from a census perspective. The number of skilled masons and bricklayers listed in the 1851 census for all of England is not nearly enough to account for this project, plus all the other construction, factories, railways, buildings, happening at the same time. The official story requires us to believe that an army of highly skilled artisans appeared, almost from nowhere, worked for 2 decades in perilous conditions, and then seemingly vanished from the records. The numbers do not lie. They paint a picture of a system operating with an impossible efficiency. The sum of the parts, the material production, the transport logistics, the skilled labor pool, the communication methods, do not add up to the whole. The only way the equation balances is if one of the core variables is wrong. What if the amount of new construction was far, far less than we are told? When a narrative is contradicted by the physical and mathematical evidence, we must propose an alternative. This does not require a leap into fantasy. It requires a simple, controlled hypothesis based on the available facts. The most logical explanation is this. The project led by Joseph Bazalgette was not primarily a project of creation, but one of discovery, refurbishment, and connection. Let us propose that a significant, pre-existing subterranean system of tunnels already lay beneath London. An older system, of unknown origin, perhaps built with a technology and a level of organization that was not present in the 19th century. In this scenario, the Great Stink was the catalyst not for building something new from scratch, but for mapping, clearing, and integrating this existing network. Bazalgette's genius was not that of an architect who designed 1,100 miles of tunnels, but that of a brilliant systems engineer who figured out how a massive, ancient system worked and how to adapt it for modern use. The 318 million bricks were not used to build the main tunnels themselves, but to reline damaged sections, to build new storm drains, to construct the smaller connecting sewers that fed into the main arteries, and to build the grand pumping stations needed to manage the flow. The 3.5 million cubic yards of earth were not from digging the main tunnels, but from clearing centuries of silt and debris that had clogged them, and from digging the thousands of smaller trenches to link houses to the system. This hypothesis resolves all of the logistical impossibilities. The number of required bricks per day drops to a manageable level. The amount of earth to be moved becomes realistic. The need for an impossibly large army of master bricklayers is reduced to a smaller, more specialized force for repairs and additions. The project becomes less about impossible creation and more about an incredibly ambitious industrial archaeology and retrofitting project. This also explains the narrative. It is far easier and more politically advantageous to claim you built the entire system than to admit you found it and fixed it up. The story of a Victorian triumph over nature solidifies the image of a powerful empire at its zenith. The hero-architect narrative is a clean, simple way to assign ownership. The project was real, the work was immense, but its fundamental nature may have been deliberately miscategorized. They didn't build a new city beneath the streets. They colonized it. We are left with two competing explanations. One is a heroic story that defies the laws of mathematics and logistics. The other is a quieter, more logical hypothesis of discovery and adaptation, which fits the available evidence but contradicts the official record. The story of London's sewers is a microcosm of a larger phenomenon. We are often handed simple, satisfying narratives about our past, particularly the recent industrial past. We are told that our modern world was built from scratch by a few brilliant minds in a short burst of progress. But the physical evidence often suggests a more complex story. The foundations of our cities, the very infrastructure that allows them to function, may be older and more mysterious than we are led to believe. The numbers do not support the legend. The scale does not match the timeline. It is easy to accept the story we are given. It requires no effort, but it is more rewarding to examine the data for ourselves, to ask the difficult questions, and to follow the logic where it leads, even if it leads to uncomfortable conclusions. Look at the foundations of your own city. Look at the old bridges, the tunnels, the dams, the canals. Read the official story, but then, do the math. Does the narrative hold up to scrutiny? History is not a closed book. It is a collection of records, and records can be incomplete, misinterpreted, or deliberately misleading. The evidence is all around us, waiting to be re-examined. The truth is not hidden in a secret vault. It is simply archived, waiting for those with the patience to look. If this investigation has prompted you to question, then its purpose has been served. Continue to seek the patterns. Continue to analyze the record.